Hey everyone, today I'm super excited to announce the first public beta release of the Elements CMS. So if you've been following along over the last few weeks, you'll have seen me demonstrate the CMS multiple times, and today I'm really excited we can release the first set of CMS components for you. Today we're releasing the collection, the item, and a brand new Load More component. Before we get into the CMS, I want to reiterate, this is a public beta release. There are bugs, there are limitations, and you will very likely run into issues when using the CMS. If you're happy using beta software, then please follow along with this video and start using the CMS in your own projects. Just be aware, as I said, there will be bugs and issues that you run into. What we're looking for with this release is feedback from you so that we can shape the CMS to be exactly what you want it to be. Okay, with that being said, let's jump into the demo. So I'm working on this Appleseed Daily blog. Now this project will be available for download so that you can use it as a starting point for your next CMS project. I'm on the home page here and you can see I've got a list of posts and I've already designed the way I want each one of these posts to look. Now, rather than going through all of the details in Elements, what I want to do first is just preview this in the browser. And I'm going to show you what we've got ready and available for you. So you can see here a list of posts. I can click on one of those. It takes me to that individual post. I also have this new Load More component, and that does exactly what you would expect. Click on that and it will load more posts into the page. We've got an archive page that lists all of our posts. We also have an about page. This page pulls in static single content. So this is not a collection. This is a single piece of data from the CMS. We also have a list of authors here. So if we hop back into Elements, I'm going to show you how to set all of this up and how everything works. Okay, so I'm on the home page here, and the first thing I want to show you is the page structure for this project. You can see I've got all of my pages here. I also have a CMS folder. This is where I'm storing all of the data for the CMS. You're free to customize this folder structure to whatever works for you. What we've got is a pages folder here, and we're going to be pulling in this about.md file into the about page. I also have a list of posts or a folder of posts, and then I have authors that are going to be associated with each one of these posts. So before we look at any of the markdown files, let's see how we set up a collection. So you can see here, I already have a collection of posts. What I'm going to do is just delete that, and we're going to start again. So I'm going to add a collection into here. The first thing I need to do is hook up this collection to my posts. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and choose the CMS posts folder. This will pull in all of the post data into this collection loop. The next thing I need to do is start designing each one of these posts. So the way this works is you get access to all of the data for each one of the items in the collection, and you can use any of the core components that ship with Elements to display that data. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to add a text component, and in here, rather than writing standard text, we are going to use the twig syntaxing template. If you're not familiar with that, it's very simple. All you do is add two curly braces, then you get access to the item.title. So all we're saying here is we want to use the item title. We want that to be displayed here. If we go ahead and preview this in the browser, you can see each one of my titles are being displayed. So these are all of the posts that are available in my post folder here. If we want to design that, we are using the core components. So you're used to all of the controls that you get. So on the text, for example, we can set the tag. We can say this is an H2. We could set the size to be large. Actually, let's make that a bit larger. We can change the weight. We could change the color and things like that. But what I'm going to do is just add a bit of margin. So we space the titles out like so. If I go back and preview that in the browser, you can now see we're getting custom designed collection lists directly in Elements. So we've got a visual editor, we're using the core components, and we're mixing in CMS data. I hope you're starting to see the power that is available to you with these set of components. So we could continue with this, and we could add another text component in here. We could grab the item.author.name and get that displayed in there. We could change the margin on this, bring this down, perhaps add a little bit of margin to the bottom of here, like so. We could go back and preview that in the browser. You can see we're now getting the author name displayed here. But rather than do all of that over again, what I've done is I've saved this as a template in my project. So I can use this post list, I can drop it straight in, and you'll see that we've already designed that post list there. If we go back and preview, you can see we've got that design that I showed you at the beginning of the video. Okay, let me just show you how some of the filtering and things like that work on a collection. So you can see down here we have filters. We can order the collection list. We can say by the date published and descending. We can change the filtering, so we can say we only want published posts, and we want anything that's in the past, so nothing that's from the future, because we don't want those displayed yet. So you can add a date to each one of your markdown files, and that allows you to schedule a post. So any dates in the future won't be displayed in this list. We've also got pagination, so we can set how many items per page. If we change that to 2 and preview in the browser, you'll see only 2 posts get displayed. If we click load more, we'll get another 2. And then if we click load more again, we'll get the final one. So we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 posts in this blog so far, but you can see there the load more component reads in how many pages or how many posts per page do you want. We said 2, so you get 2 to begin with. Load more, you get another 2. Load more and you get the final one. So all of that is hooked up and it just works automatically for you. The load more component works by, you can drop any component into here. So if I just remove the button from there for now, we could add a text component into here. We could just say load more posts. If we go back and preview that, you can see we now have a text link here. When we click on that, it works exactly the same. So the freedom you have here is that on the load more component, you can put any component inside of there and it will act as the load more trigger. So you could have an icon if you wanted to, or just some text or an image or anything you want in there. We've chosen to have a button. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is individual post pages. So on the collection component here, on the settings, you might have seen that we have an item template. This is how you can set up individual post pages for your blog or for your collection. So all we need to do is create a post page that we've already done here. And I'll show you how this works in a minute. But all we then need to do is on the collection is link that item template to that post page. That will then, in the background, the CMS will link up each one of the URLs for these collection items to that post. So if I show you in here, the link for this text is going to the item.url. So this will be automatically generated for you. You will get a URL for each individual item in this collection. So that is how, when we click on the title, it takes me to the individual post page here. Now, on the individual post page, we can design this however we want. All we need to do is use the single item component to pull in data for this item. Okay, so a little bit complex there, but let me show you how it works. Let's drop in an item component. Now, all we need to do is hook up this item to our posts folder. So what we're going to do is choose the source. We're going to go to a page, CMS, and we're going to choose the post folder again. So we set the link. that now automatically pulls in each individual item into this component. So you can see here we are using a single post here, a single item. Inside of there, in the same way we did on the collection, we have access to the twig syntaxing, and we have access to all of the data for this item. So again, what I'm going to do is add a text component into here, and let's actually just get rid of this one for now. We then need to use that twig syntaxing. So we're going to say two curly braces, item.title, and close that out. Let's make this a bit bigger so we can see it. And I'm going to make it bold. Okay, now when we go back to the browser and we refresh an individual post page, all we get is the title. And that's because that's all we've added inside of this single item component. This, again, hopefully you're seeing the power, but this lets you build up and design each piece of content however you want, okay? So again, in here, what we could do, actually, let's add another piece of text. And as I showed you, we get access to all of the related data for this post. So I'm going to show you exactly how this works in a second, but we have access to the author for this post. So if I say the item.author.name, and we close that out, we say written by. Okay, let's make that a little bit bigger so we can see it. And we'll go back to the browser and refresh. And you can see here, this is written by, and then the CMS is replacing our dynamic content with the author name. And this is by Johnny. Okay, so how does that get hooked up? Well, on the README post here, you'll see we have an author, and that author is Johnny. Now, if you haven't been following along and you're unsure of how this works, this is a standard markdown feature called front matter. This allows you to expose any data in a key value type format. So we can have, for example, published and false. This will allow you, as I showed on the homepage, on a collection filtering, you can say that the status must be published. Okay, so this by default, all the posts will be published, but you can set that to false to remove it from your collection list. However, the related data works in when you have an author, and that author is Johnny, the CMS will look for an authors folder, and it will look for the johnny.md file. So the data inside of here will be automatically available to you via the item.author. So again, this author is Johnny. That means that this item will have access to the author name, the author title, bio, date, and image. You can add any other data that you want here. You could add something like a Twitter, or maybe I should call that X now. So you could add the X username, whatever that is. You can add any data here, and you can give it any value, okay? However, let's stick to the images. So the item author image, we have a source here, and I'm going to show you how this works in just a second, but all we're doing is referencing a resource over here. So we're saying the images folder and the johnny.jpg file is what we want to use. So on our post page now, you can see we're using the item author name, and that's coming from our Johnny file. We can also use an image component. So a standard image component here, we can drop that in, and we can say that we want to use CMS data. So we choose CMS here, and then we need to hook that up to the correct piece of data. So what we want is the item.author.image.src. Okay, now let's go back to the browser and we'll refresh that. And that didn't work because, as you can see here, this isn't inside of the item. So this is a very key point. If the component isn't inside of the CMS item or collection component, you won't have access to the data. So that's kind of handy that that didn't work, because that shows you the importance of making sure the components are in the right area or in the right component on your page. So now if we go back and refresh, you'll see that that image automatically works. So one key thing to note here is you can use a remote resource for the images. So you can set in an HTTP, you can have mydomain.com, anywhere you want. This can be a remote resource. You can use an Unsplash image, you can use any image available on the internet. If this source is not prefixed with HTTP, we will assume that it is a local resource inside of your project, and the CMS will prefix this with the correct path to your resources folder on the server. So let me say that again. This is a local resource. These resources get published to your server. The CMS will work out where did this get published to, and it will automatically resolve the correct path to this image when it's being displayed in the browser. So all you need to do when you want to use a local resource is set the path, so the images /Johnny. All you need to do is set that, and the CMS will do the rest of the work for you. Okay, now let's go back to having the single post into here. So I've saved that again as a template here, and let's go and refresh that, and you'll see the single post gets updated. Now, just to reiterate how this works and how flexible this is, I'm going to very quickly build up an author component. So I'm going to drop in a flex, and what I want is an image in here, and I want some text. So I'm going to drop those in there. Now the image, again, what I want to use is the item.author.image source. Okay, I'm now going to just set the custom aspect ratio to 1, make that square. I'm going to set the sizing to be about 45 pixels. And on the flex, I'm going to set the direction to row. I'm going to set a little bit of horizontal gap. So I'm going to set that to 3. And then in the text here, I'm going to use the item.author.name. Okay. So what I want to do also is set the align items to be center, so that those are nicely centered. And then I'm also going to make this fully rounded. So I'm going to make this image border radius full. That's going to set it rounded. And now I'm going to go back and preview this. You can see I've very quickly built up an author template here. So we could save this off as a global, or we could save it off as a template. We can simply drag that into here if we wanted to, or we could convert it to a global. I'm not going to do either of those just for now, but I did want to demonstrate just very, very quickly how flexible this system is. So again, if we wanted to make this slightly smaller, maybe we wanted this to be 30 pixels. We want the gap on here to be slightly smaller, and we wanted the author name to be bold. Perhaps we wanted the spacing to be slightly like this. We wanted to change the color, something a bit lighter. We can do all of that using all of the controls you're used to with the core components inside of Elements. However, I'm just going to delete that because that was just a little quick demo of how flexible this system is. Let's move on to the other pages on the site. So we've got the archive page here. Again, this is using a collection component. All we're doing is setting the collection to be the post. We've set up the post, or the individual post template, and we are just listing out all of the posts here. So on the pagination, we're just setting a higher number. You could set this to 1,000. You could set this to whatever you wanted to. We've set it to 25 because we've only got a few posts, and those are all being listed out here. So essentially the blog page and the archive page are very similar. All the blog page does is show you the latest posts and allow you to load more. The archive is a full list of all the posts on the page. It's two different ways to use the collection component on your site, just to give you a couple of different examples. Okay, let's move on to the About page. Now, on the About page, we are using a single item that is not coming necessarily from a collection. So if you want single pieces of data on your site, you can do that by using the item component. Now I'm going to show you how to recreate this now. So let's add an item into here. What we're going to do is link up this item to CMS pages about. So this is a single piece of data. You could have multiple pages. You can use them on the same page. You can use them on different pages. You can set this up however you want. We are going to just use the about.md file here. Now, this then works exactly the same way as I showed you on the post page with the single item. What we have access to is all of the data for the linked to item. So in this case, it's not dynamically coming from a collection. It's coming from a static piece of data from the about page here. So again, now we have access to all that data. We can do whatever we want. What I'm going to do is simply output the item.body. And I actually don't want to use a text component. I want to use a typography component. I'm going to tell you why in just a second. So item.body into here. Now, when we preview this page, you'll see that that gets duplicated there because I've just duplicated exactly what we had before. Now, why did we want to use a typography component in this instance? Well, that is because inside of here, you can write as much content as you want. So the item.body will be anything you add inside of here. So for example, we can add a heading in Markdown. So we could say feedback. Now, if you're familiar with Markdown, this is how you add a heading to. Now, just to mention this, there is going to be an online editor that is coming later. So you won't have to edit raw Markdown files. There will be a nice editor online where you log into your site and you get a visual editor for this content. That is coming later, but for now, we're just using standard Markdown files. Anyway, this has now added a heading to our about page. Okay, so in here the body for that is now going to have a heading. So if I add that, you'll see we get this feedback heading here. Now we want to use a typography component because this allows you to style more of a CMS style content like the body of a post. If we were to use a standard text component, so if I actually do that and we add item.body into here instead of the typography, so we get rid of that. If we preview that, you'll see we still get the content, but none of it is properly styled. So the feedback isn't bold, it isn't like a heading. The links aren't styled here, even though the link works, and the paragraphs aren't spaced out. So you can see this doesn't get any styling. So if you ever want the body of a piece of data from your CMS, you're going to want to use the typography because that is hooked up to the typography styling in the theme studio. So you can see here I've got an article styling, and this allows you to style basically sub content inside of it. So you can see you can style paragraphs, headings, codes, and quotes, and we'll be adding more to this later. But this allows you to set how the paragraphs look. So on the page here, you can see this is a paragraph, this is a heading 2, these are my links. So if we want to change any of that, you can see we can change the link styling down here. We could perhaps use the brand color instead. And we can set the hover to be brand, maybe a bit lighter. If we go back and refresh that, that's not working because I already visited that thing. So I need to set the visited style here. If we refresh, you'll see that that does get updated. So you can see this is working. Hover, if we didn't want that underlined, we could turn that off. You can then see that as I hover over the link, the underline disappears. If we want to change the heading 2 to be slightly larger, we can do that there. Refresh, you'll see that gets bigger. So this typography component, very, very useful when you start using the CMS and particularly the item body content, okay? So the next thing I want to show you is we also have this authors list. So you don't need to use a collection only for a blog. You can list out a collection of anything you want, okay? So in this case, we have built up an image card. we've got the image as I showed you. This is using the item image source. So because we've linked this authors to the folder of authors, so again here, each image or each item, sorry, is an author. So the item.image.source. That's how we are listing out this image here. Then we get the item name and the item title. So if we preview that, that is how we are building up these cards of authors. Now the next thing we've also done is create an individual author page. So if I click on one of those, you'll see that gets that will take you to an author page, and that is a hidden page here. So if I just go back to my about page, on the authors list, you'll see we have an author page template. So this works in we have an item template here. This works exactly the same as the blog post on the homepage. We're simply listing or linking to an individual item template. Then on the image card flex here, you'll see we're using the item.url, and that is taking us to this individual author page. Once again, hopefully you're getting the idea here. We're using a single item component, and we're using data for this single author. In this case, we're using that data to output whatever we want on the page. And as you can see here, we get the image, the author title, their or the author name, their title, and their bio. So if I go back to about and we click on Julia, you'll see Julia's information gets added to the page. And again with Johnny. So again, hopefully you're seeing the flexibility in this system. You can use it for blog posts. You can use it for listing out team members, for example. You could build an FAQ if you wanted to. You could simply loop over your FAQs, use the accordion component, pull in the CMS data, have a play around with that, see how you get on. Hopefully you are seeing the power of this CMS system. That is all I'm going to demo for you for today. I think I've gone on more than enough. Do have a play with the CMS. As I say, we are only shipping a limited set of components. We are going with just the collection item and the load more for this initial release. We do have more components coming. You will have seen me demo those previously, but we have full pagination components. There is a search component, there is conditionals, there's tag listing, author listings, filter component support, gallery support, related items. The list goes on. All of that is in the works, but we want to get a really tight release out to you so that we can get a feedback loop going, improve these components that we're shipping right now, and just continue with improving the CMS going forward. Okay, the final thing that I want to mention is you will have seen a little Elements CMS Beta tag down here. If you want to turn this off, you are going to have to go to each collection or item component, go to the beta here and agree to that you have read the announcement release and that you're okay to use this beta CMS. As I say, it is a beta. You will run into bugs. There will be issues. I would really encourage you of holding off on using this on a production site just yet, especially for this first initial release. I know everyone's really keen to get this CMS into their projects, but as I say, do be cautious with that. There will be bugs. You might need to redo things. Things will not work as expected. Okay, that's it for this video. I am so happy to get this first beta release of the CMS out to you guys. There's been so many of you anxiously waiting to start using this. I can't wait to hear your feedback on what we're releasing today. If you do have comments or questions or you run into issues, please post a comment on the forum and I'll be sure to get back to you there. But yeah, as I say, please have a play around with the CMS. Enjoy it and let me know what you start building with it.